Say this prayer to cover your children at night. There's a certain silence that only comes after sunset, the kind that makes every thought louder, every worry heavier. You stand by the doorway, looking at your child asleep, their breathing soft, their innocence untouched by the noise of the world. And yet, behind that quiet moment, your heart whispers a prayer that only a parent can understand. God, keep them safe while I cannot. This is the sacred tension every parent lives with, the desire to protect and the realization of limits. During the day, you can see them, guide them, hold their hand through chaos. But at night, when the world turns still, you face what every soul eventually must, the surrender of control. That's when faith becomes more than belief. It becomes trust in motion. Neuroscience shows that as we fall asleep, the brain releases its grip on external awareness, entering deeper rhythms of restoration. But the spirit, it doesn't rest the same way. It stays open, receptive, listening. That's why the atmosphere we create before sleep matters. A home filled with peace transmits security to a child's nervous system, calming heart rate and lowering cortisol levels. It's not just spiritual, it's biological. When faith enters the room, the body responds. There's also a truth that philosophers and saints have always agreed upon. The unseen governs the seen. Descartes once said that to doubt is to think, and to think is to exist. But faith adds another layer. To believe is to release. When you pray for your children, you're not escaping responsibility. You're expanding it beyond the limits of your reach. You're aligning your mind and heart with something larger than fear. This is where the night transforms. The darkness that once carried anxiety now becomes the canvas where divine guardians stand watch. You begin to realize that protection is not found in constant vigilance, but in connection between heaven and your home, between a parent's voice and a child's dreams. Tonight is not just another night, it's a moment of alignment between the human and the eternal. Because prayer isn't about escaping the unknown, it's about speaking light into it. And when you whisper those words, something happens. The energy in the room shifts, the air softens, and the same silence that once made you anxious now becomes sacred. The night no longer feels empty. It feels held. When the world grows quiet, every sound becomes a mirror. The ticking of a clock, the distant hum of the night, even your own breathing, all of it reminds you how fragile peace can feel. The chaos of the day fades, but in its place comes something more intimate, awareness. It's in these moments when nothing moves that your mind starts to replay the day, the small victories, the fears you didn't voice, the moments you wish you could shield your child from forever. Silence can be deceiving. On the surface, it looks like rest, but beneath it lies a field of thought, emotion, and memory, unfolding in perfect sequence. Andrew Huberman explains that during stillness, the brain enters a state of recalibration, processing information, storing emotion, preparing for renewal. Yet the same quiet that heals can also reveal. It exposes what's been hidden under the noise. For a parent, it's the quiet that makes love feel heavier, because that's when you realize how deeply you depend on a presence greater than yourself. Philosophically, Descartes would say that awareness begins in doubt, but here it begins in surrender. The quiet doesn't ask you to fix anything, it asks you to listen, to sense what is unseen but profoundly present. When the world grows quiet, faith begins to whisper. And if you listen closely, you'll notice something powerful. Peace doesn't come from the absence of noise, but from the awareness of divine order within it. This is the threshold of prayer, not spoken yet, but already alive. A bridge between exhaustion and trust, between your human limits and God's endless vigilance. The world may be silent, but heaven is not. The weight of watching over innocence. There's a sacred ache in every parent's heart, the silent understanding that love means carrying both joy and fear in the same breath. You watch your child sleep, their small chest rising and falling, unaware of how fiercely the world can bruise what is pure. That's the invisible burden of parenthood, the instinct to protect a soul that hasn't yet learned what danger feels like. It's not control you crave, it's assurance, the impossible desire to guarantee safety in a world that offers none. From a psychological lens, this weight is the manifestation of what Judith Beck calls protective cognition, the mind's attempt to safeguard what it values most by anticipating every possible threat. It's not anxiety without reason, it's biology intertwined with love. Your brain is wired to scan for risk, but your spirit is wired to trust. The conflict between the two creates that nightly tension every parent knows, lying awake, hoping your presence is enough. Faith becomes the bridge between the brain and the heart, where one calculates, the other believes. Andrew Huberman would explain that faith rebalances neural chemistry, shifting the brain from hypervigilance into restoration. When prayer begins, cortisol lowers and oxytocin rises. Your body starts to mirror your belief. You breathe differently. You release. That's when you realize something profound. Watching over innocence doesn't mean standing guard every second. It means trusting that divine love watches when you cannot. You are not abandoning your role. You are expanding it beyond physical sight, transforming worry into worship, control into communion. Tonight, the weight you carry can become the very doorway through which peace enters, because love was never meant to imprison. It was meant to protect through faith. The unseen hour of the soul. There is a moment in every night when time feels suspended, when the body sleeps, but something deeper stays awake. That's the unseen hour of the soul, the silent intersection between the natural and the eternal. The ancients called it the watch of the night, when the spirit of man communes unconsciously with the presence of God. Science calls it the cycle of deep rest, where the brain clears toxins, repairs neurons, and restores balance. But those who have felt it know, it's more than biology. It's a sacred rhythm. In this hidden hour, the visible world loses its hold. The mind drifts into dreams, and the soul begins its quiet dialogue with heaven. Thoughts fade, yet awareness persists. Andrew Huberman would say the brain is never truly off. It simply shifts its focus inward, tuning out the noise of the external world. But faith teaches that this inward shift is the very space where the divine whispers back. When your child sleeps, this unseen dialogue unfolds in them too. Their spirit, still untouched by the clutter of doubt, rests closer to the frequency of peace. It's why children often wake radiant, untouched by the fears that haunt adults. Their souls have spent the night near grace. That's the mystery. While the eyes are closed, heaven works. Descartes once questioned the certainty of everything except thought itself. I think, therefore I am. But here, in the unseen hour, existence transcends thought. It becomes trust itself. It's a knowing without words, a peace that surpasses intellect. This is why covering your children in prayer matters. It's not superstition, it's participation in the unseen order. When you pray, you invite alignment. You set in motion something invisible yet tangible. Heaven listens when the world sleeps, shadows that try to enter. Every night carries its own quiet battles. When darkness falls, it doesn't only dim the lights, it awakens the imagination, the memories, and the thoughts we suppress during the day. Fear has a way of finding its voice when everything else goes silent. For a child, that may appear as a nightmare, a restless stirring, or a sudden cry in the dark. For a parent, it's the invisible storm that begins inside the mind, the flood of what-ifs that steal peace one thought at a time. Judith Beck reminds us that worry is the brain's attempt to prepare for pain before it arrives. It's a cognitive reflex born from love, but also from fear of loss. Yet this same reflex, when left unchecked, becomes the shadow itself. Every anxious thought releases signals that keep the body alert long after the world has gone to sleep. The line between emotional and spiritual darkness begins to blur. But shadows can't exist without light. Andrew Huberman would explain that the brain's perception of threat changes when light, even symbolic light, is reintroduced. Prayer functions as that light. It rewires focus, reclaims attention, shifts chemistry. The moment you begin to pray, your brain transitions from defense to connection. You stop reacting to the shadow and start aligning with the source of light itself. This is where divine authority meets psychological healing. You don't fight the darkness, you illuminate it. You replace rumination with revelation. The shadow loses its power not because it disappears, but because it's surrounded by something stronger. And in that moment, the room changes. The air feels lighter. Peace begins to move again. What was once fear becomes faith in action. What was once silence becomes sanctuary, the light that never sleeps. Even when the world lies still and every window fades into darkness, there remains a presence that never closes its eyes. The light that never sleeps is not a distant flame. It's an awareness, a divine vigilance that neither weakens nor forgets. You sense it in the quiet pulse of peace that rises after you pray, in the way calm lingers, though nothing outside has changed. That is the evidence of a higher intelligence watching, guiding, sustaining. Neuroscience offers a reflection of this truth. While we sleep, the brain continues its silent orchestration, regulating breathing, repairing tissues, processing memories. A part of us is always awake, ensuring survival even in unconsciousness. The divine mirrors that same pattern on a cosmic scale. As your body rests, God's awareness stays active, holding the threads of your life with precision beyond your comprehension. The system of the universe itself was built to guard continuity, not chaos. Faith gives meaning to this design. You realize that peace is not the absence of motion, but the presence of divine constancy. The Stoics understood this long ago. Serenity doesn't depend on what you control, but on knowing there is order behind what you can't. When you whisper a prayer over your children, you align your human fragility with that eternal constancy, an act of surrender that transforms fear into trust. There's something profoundly humbling about this realization. You no longer fight to stay awake. You rest in the truth that heaven doesn't sleep. The same light that once guided creation still watches your home tonight. You can breathe. You can let go. Because where human vigilance ends, divine awareness continues without interruption. The parent's silent cry. There's a moment, just before sleep, when a parent's heart speaks without words. It's not loud, it's not desperate, it's sacred. A silent cry that says, "Protect them where I cannot reach." It's a language the body knows long before the lips ever move. You feel it in the chest, in that subtle ache that sits between gratitude and fear. It's the realization that love has made you vulnerable, that your peace now lives inside someone else's safety. Judith Beck would call this moment a core belief exposure, when your deepest values surface without resistance. It's pure, raw, unfiltered emotion. Neuroscience confirms it too. During these emotional surges, the limbic system activates, signaling both care and alertness. That's why a parent can wake from sleep at the faintest sound. The brain has been rewired by love to remain half awake, even in rest. But here lies the paradox. The same instinct that drives you to protect can also drain you, if not balanced by faith. You can't control every outcome, nor should you try. Andrew Huberman's work shows that when the mind feels safe to release control, the nervous system restores itself faster. In spiritual terms, surrender becomes healing. The moment you say, "God, I trust you with what I love most," your body aligns with that declaration. Your pulse slows, your breath deepens, the storm quiets. This silent cry is not weakness, it's recognition. That protection born from fear is fragile, but protection born from faith is eternal. You're not praying because you're helpless, you're praying because you finally understood where true strength comes from. In that realization, love matures. It expands from instinct into intercession, the sacred exchange. There comes a point when the heart understands that prayer is not begging, it's exchanging. You give your fear, and heaven gives you peace. You surrender your illusion of control, and in return, you receive clarity. This moment, quiet, invisible, deeply human, is where transformation begins. You stop trying to manage the unseen and start aligning with it. That's the sacred exchange, letting divine order do what human anxiety cannot. Cognitive behavioral therapy describes this as cognitive reframing, the act of shifting perspective from helplessness to empowerment through renewed interpretation. But here, The reframing happens not just in thought, but in spirit. Judith Beck might say it's the renewal of a mental narrative. Faith says it's the renewal of the soul. Both point to the same truth. Peace is not something you wait for, it's something you participate in. When you pray over your child, you are not just speaking into the air. You are entering this exchange. The mind releases tension, the body follows, and the soul realigns. Andrew Huberman's findings on neuroplasticity show that consistent prayer and meditation reshape neural circuits. Pathways once dominated by fear begin to associate safety with surrender. The brain literally learns to trust. The Stoics called this act consenting to providence. To let what is divine move as it will. It's not passive submission, it's intelligent cooperation with something greater. You recognize that divine wisdom sees beyond your horizon. And suddenly, surrender no longer feels like losing control. It feels like coming home. In this sacred exchange, love matures from emotion into purpose. You become part of the protection you once prayed for. Your voice becomes a vessel, your words a shield. And heaven meets you in the middle, not out of obligation but out of covenant, speaking heaven into the room. When you begin to pray, the atmosphere changes. The air seems to thicken with meaning, as if every molecule is listening. Words spoken in faith are not just sounds, they are frequencies that alter both the mind and the space around it. You don't need to raise your voice or repeat formulas. You only need to speak with conviction, because heaven doesn't measure volume, it measures alignment. Andrew Huberman would say that spoken intention triggers neural resonance. When what you think, feel, and say move in unison, the brain shifts from survival mode to coherence. It's as if your entire body agrees to believe. This agreement releases calm chemicals, lowers blood pressure, and sharpens focus. Spiritually, the same alignment amplifies prayer. When your emotions, thoughts, and faith are synchronized, your words carry power. They don't just describe reality, they begin to shape it. Descartes wrote that words express thought, but faith transforms it. In that sense, prayer becomes a bridge between the rational and the transcendent. It's not a fantasy, it's a conscious reordering of chaos into clarity. As you speak heaven into the room, you're not escaping the world, you're inviting divine structure into it. Every declaration you make over your child, peace, safety, light, echoes beyond walls, beyond time. Neuroscience and faith meet here seamlessly. The more you repeat words of life, the stronger their pathways become in the brain. This is neuroplasticity in service of grace. You are literally training both mind and spirit to hold peace as their natural state. The atmosphere responds because you do. And when you finish, you'll notice something profound. The silence feels different now. It's not emptiness, it's presence. Heaven has entered the room quietly, completely, the night watch of angels. There is a stillness that follows true prayer, not the silence of absence, but the silence of guardianship. In that calm, something begins to unfold beyond what human senses can capture. The ancients called it the watch of the night, the unseen realm where angels stand guard over the living. You can't see them, but you feel the difference. A subtle weight of peace, a soft pressure in the air, as if the room itself exhales. Philosophers like Aristotle believed that order sustains existence, and this divine order is what angels represent. Unseen agents maintaining harmony where chaos once reigned. From a psychological lens, this presence corresponds to what Daniel Goleman described as felt safety, a state where the nervous system detects no threat and finally releases tension. Prayer, therefore, doesn't summon fantasy. It invites the brain and the spirit into the same posture of rest. Andrew Huberman's research on focus explains that when the mind perceives safety, sensory perception broadens and calm awareness replaces hypervigilance. This mirrors what happens spiritually when you pray. Your consciousness expands to perceive divine protection that was always there. You don't create it, you recognize it. The presence of angels is the awareness of divine attention, translated into peace. In this watch, your children are not alone. As their dreams unfold, as shadows move across walls, the unseen light remains constant. You might call it energy, Others might call it grace, but its essence is the same. The unbroken vigilance of love. When you pray, you join that watch. Your words align with theirs, forming an invisible circle of protection that no fear can penetrate. Tonight the angels keep their post, and in their silent watch your home becomes a sanctuary where rest is holy and peace is alive. The peace that breathes through walls. After prayer, peace doesn't just rest inside you, it begins to expand. It moves through walls into corners, into spaces untouched by sound. It's not imagination, it's the measurable resonance of calm. Scientists like Andrew Huberman describe how emotional states alter energy in the environment through tone, breath, and rhythm. When your nervous system enters coherence, others nearby sense it too, especially children. Their brains mirror yours, syncing with your calm. Peace becomes contagious. This is where the spiritual and the physiological merge. As your breath deepens and your heart slows, your body sends signals of safety into the atmosphere. What once carried anxiety now carries assurance. The same oxygen that fills your lungs becomes a quiet prayer without words, spreading stability throughout the room. Descartes might have said that existence is confirmed through thought, but here it's confirmed through serenity. The awareness that you and the space you inhabit are aligned with divine rhythm. Faith in this form is not abstract, it's architectural. It builds an environment where fear has no foothold. A child asleep in a room infused with prayer absorbs more than silence, they absorb emotional structure. Neuroscience shows that children raised in peaceful spaces develop more stable neural patterns. Their bodies learn early that safety is real. That's the unseen miracle. Peace not only comforts, it rewires. In those moments, your home becomes more than shelter. It becomes sanctuary. Walls that once echoed worry now hold stillness. Every breath feels intentional, every shadow softened by light. You realize that peace isn't static. It moves, it breathes, it inhabits. And once it fills a space, darkness forgets how to stay. When dreams become sacred ground. There is a point in the night when dreams stop being random fragments of memory and begin to echo something divine. For a child, that space is pure, untouched by cynicism, still soft enough for heaven to speak in symbols. When you pray before sleep, you prepare that territory and the mind's inner landscape to receive peace instead of fear. The dream becomes a sacred classroom where the soul continues learning in silence. Neuroscience tells us that during REM sleep, the brain processes emotion and consolidates memory. But faith adds another layer. The spirit doesn't rest when the body does. It continues to absorb what the environment provides. Andrew Huberman's studies on environmental influence show that even subtle sensory cues, tone of voice, rhythm of breathing, ambient stillness, are stored in the subconscious. That means when you speak peace over your child before bed, it doesn't end in the air. It settles into their dreams. Descartes believed that dreams could reveal hidden truths about existence, that in them, the boundary between thought and being thins. Spiritually, this is where divine presence meets imagination. The light you spoke before sleep travels with them. Their dreams, once unguarded, now become a canvas where grace paints quietly. You're no longer watching over them from the outside. Your prayer is moving through them from within. And there's something humbling about that. You realize that divine communication is not limited to waking hours. While you sleep, heaven teaches in silence, comforts in images, restores in whispers. That's why you don't need to fear the unknown of the night, because the same God who guards reality also walks through dreams. The morning after the miracle. When dawn finally breaks, it feels different. The light that filters through the window is the same, but the air carries something new, a quiet weight of victory. You sense it before you even open your eyes. The house feels still, yet alive, as though peace itself decided to stay. That's the morning after the miracle, when what you prayed in faith has already worked in silence. Neuroscience teaches that the brain resets emotional tone during sleep. What was overwhelming yesterday can feel lighter today, not because the situation changed, but because the mind has integrated faith into its patterns. Andrew Huberman's research shows that gratitude and prayer before sleep can alter the brain's chemistry overnight, reducing anxiety and strengthening emotional resilience by morning. You're not just waking up rested, you're waking up recalibrated. Spiritually, this is the evidence of divine partnership. The unseen work of the night becomes visible through small signs. Your child wakes peacefully, the home feels lighter, even your thoughts move slower, clearer. Descartes might call this clear and distinct perception, the recognition of truth not through argument, but through experience. Peace that was once prayed for has become observable reality. You realize the miracle didn't announce itself with noise or spectacle. It happened in rhythm with creation, silently, perfectly while you slept. Heaven worked not because you demanded it, but because you aligned with it. The same order that governs galaxies was moving through your child's breath, through your heartbeat, through every unseen moment of trust. And in that recognition, gratitude rises without effort. You don't need to see angels to know they were here. You simply know. The morning light is proof enough, the eternal covering. There comes a moment when you realize the prayer you whispered last night didn't end when you said, Amen. It lingers, not as sound, but as presence. It becomes something living, woven into the rhythm of your child's life, surrounding them like unseen armor. That's the eternal covering, the understanding that divine protection isn't momentary, it's perpetual. What began as a plea has become a covenant. Judith Beck might describe this as the stabilization of belief, when faith stops being a reaction and becomes a system within the mind. It means your brain no longer seeks constant reassurance because it has encoded peace as its default. Spiritually, that's what grace does. It transforms temporary faith into lasting confidence. You're no longer praying out of fear that something might go wrong. You're praying from certainty that divine order is already at work. Andrew Huberman's findings echo this truth biologically. Repetition rewires permanence. The more you align your nights with faith, the more your nervous system learns to rest in trust. Over time, your body itself becomes a signal of peace, a living echo of the prayer you've spoken countless times. The Stoics called this ataraxia, the unshakable calm that comes from harmony between belief and action. This is where your role as a parent transcends biology. You're not just raising a child, you're shaping a soul within a field of divine protection. Every night you speak light, every sigh of surrender, every quiet thank you builds a structure unseen yet unbreakable. And as you look once more at your sleeping child, you understand. This peace was never temporary. It didn't end with the night. It continues, pulsing through every heartbeat, every dream, every tomorrow. The covering remains, because love that trusts in God never ends.